Hello, dear Maniacs, how are you? At the beginning of our movie, we meet our female lead, Jiayin. When she was just 12 years old, her life took a tough turn. Her father passed away. Because of that, she decides to sell her childhood home, a place full of memories, and move somewhere new. Fast forward a few years, and we see her all grown up, working hard to make a living. Jiayin is not exactly thrilled with her job. She's just going through the motions, feeling a bit lost. Next in the scene, enter Ming, our male lead, who's got big dreams of starting his own property design business. He's all fired up and shows his plot design to an investor, hoping for a big break. But the investor totally ignores him and walks out. Ouch! Later that night, both Ming and Jiayin head home, and here's where things get funny. They both live in the same apartment, but here's the kicker. Ming lives there in 1999, while Jiayin lives in 2018. I know, you might be scratching your head thinking, how on earth do they live in the same place at different times? Trust me, it's all part of the mystery that unfolds later in the movie. Jiajio's chilling in the tub, enjoying her bath, while Ming's over in the kitchen, whipping up some food and giving those dirty dishes a rinse. But here's where things get weird. Jiayin spots something odd in her tub, and Ming? Well, he finds Jiajio's dress in the sink. They both stare at their respective surprises, totally baffled. But hey, they're exhausted, so they just shrug it off and hit the bed. Whatever, right? Well, that is until the next morning when Jiayin slaps Ming across the face. Out of nowhere. Now, they're both freaking out and look around to find that their rooms have somehow fused into one giant freaky room. Jiayin starts thinking Ming's some kind of thief and starts beating him with whatever she can grab. Meanwhile, poor Ming is just dodging and ducking, trying not to get whacked. Then, they finally realize that their rooms have actually merged. But it gets weirder. When Ming peeks out of the window, it's all cloudy and gloomy. But when Jiayin takes a look out of hers, it's a sunny, bright day. Confused yet? So are they. Ming, being the brave one, opens his door and steps out, only to find himself still in 1999. No big deal, right? But Jiayin? She opens Ming's door and bam! She's staring straight at the year 1999 too, even though she was in 2018 just a second ago. Panicking, she slams the door shut and quickly checks her own room, where she's safely back in 2018. Ming's jaw is on the floor because 2018 is all high-tech and futuristic, compared to his good old 1999. Both of them, now thoroughly freaked out, lock themselves inside. That's when it hits them. They're living in the same apartment, but in different timelines. Jiayin, being Jiayin, slaps Ming again. Why? Just to make sure she isn't dreaming. Ming, rubbing his face, is like, look, maybe slapping isn't gonna solve this. How about we try opening both doors together and see what happens? So Ming and Jiayin decide to test out their theory by trying to open their doors at the same time. But as soon as they do, their rooms start merging again, and they quickly realize that opening both doors together is a big no-no. Then Jiayin gets a bright idea. She remembers that her dad was still alive back in 1999. So she's like, hey Ming, let's go back to your timeline so I can see my dad. Ming agrees, and off they go to 1999. Jiayin heads straight to her old house, and what does she see? Her dad, happily playing with 10-year-old Jiayin. Overcome with emotions, Jiayin rushes towards her dad, but an earthquake suddenly hits, followed by strong winds that stop her in her tracks. Furious and frustrated, Jiayin storms back to the apartment, her heart breaking all over again. Meanwhile, Ming's getting curious about 2018 and spots Jiajio's laptop. In his world, computers are still the size of bricks. He tries to look himself up online to see what future Ming is up to, but suddenly another earthquake hits. Jiayin finally puts two and two together and tells Ming, we can't mess with our past or future. Every time we try, these earthquakes happen. You can only open your door, and that's how I get into your timeline. And I can only open mine so you can come into my timeline. Cut to the next scene, where we see a scientist and a rich businessman talking. The scientist is all excited, explaining how they created this dimensional timeline thingy. But there is a glitch. It's ended up in some random spot in the city. Now they have to find it. The businessman, though, is only thinking about one thing: how to make some serious cash off this timeline. But here the movie leaves us hanging because his face is never shown. Night rolls in, and neither Jiayin nor Ming can sleep. Jiayin was holding a keychain and gets all emotional, telling Ming about how her dad passed away, leaving her to fend for herself. To make things worse, she lost her childhood home because she couldn't pay the loan. But she's determined to buy it back one day. Morning comes, and they both head to work in their separate timelines, still processing all the weirdness. Jiayin wants to marry, but she'll only marry a guy who buys her childhood home. It's a pretty tall order, with so naturally, no one's biting. Then one day, she meets this wealthy guy who's all like, "Sure, I'll buy your house." But he's much older than her and has a strange way of talking. But hey, he's rich, so Jiayin decides to go along with it. The guy tells her, "I'll buy your house eventually, but we need to put nameplates on it. Oh, and by the way, I don't carry cash for small stuff like that. Could you spot me some money?" Jiayin, trusting him, hands over the cash, thinking she's finally about to get her dream house back. So, Jiayin waits and waits, but that guy never shows up. The light bulb finally goes off. She's been totally scammed. Now she's sitting outside the bank, fuming, until the cops show up to investigate. Meanwhile, over in the office break room, Ming is having a drink, trying to unwind. But his peace is short-lived when the company owner, the sneaky manager Zuni, and an employee stroll in. The owner starts talking big about expanding the business with all these grand ideas, and then walks out. As soon as he's gone, Zuni reveals his true colors and starts plotting with the employee on how to swindle the owner's money. Ming, being the unfortunate eavesdropper, drops something in the bathroom. Zuni hears the noise, realizes someone's overheard their evil scheme, and rushes over. He drags Ming out by the legs, confronts him, and then offers a deal. "I'll get you a loan from the bank for your business, but you keep your mouth shut about what you heard." Ming, trying to play it cool, says, "Sure, I'll think about it." But later, Zuni calls Ming into his office, flips the script, and says, "Why should I get you a loan? You've got no proof of what you heard. And guess what? You're fired." Ming begs and pleads to keep his job, promising to stay quiet, but Zuni just brushes him off and sends him packing. Cut to the next scene. Jiayin is now working at a jewelry shop when her childhood friend Xiaoya walks in. They're thrilled to see each other after all these years. Xiaoya, now married to a rich guy, casually brags about her fabulous life. Not to be outdone, Jiayin lies and says her husband is also super rich and always busy. Xiaoya invites Jiayin and her husband over for dinner that night. Jiayin is now thinking, "Why did I say all that?" Desperate, Jiayin comes up with a wild plan. She convinces Ming to pretend to be her wealthy husband. She even rents a fancy suit for him, dressing him up to look the part. They head over to Xiaoya's place, and for a while, everything's going smoothly. But then, disaster strikes. Ming, after wolfing down his food, casually takes off his suit jacket, revealing a tag that screams, "Rented." Oops. Xiaoya and her husband notice immediately, but Ming, oblivious, starts spinning ridiculous stories about his big company. They laugh, thinking he's joking, and just when you think it can't get any worse, Jiayin shows off a diamond ring worth millions, only for the fake diamond to pop out, roll near the fire, and melt into a puddle. Embarrassed beyond belief, Jiayin and Ming head home, with Jiayin crying over their humiliation. But then, they see a lottery show on TV. They start daydreaming about hitting it big, and then they search the winning lottery number thanks to their time-hopping adventures. So they go back to 1999, buy the ticket with that number, and start celebrating early. Jiayin even takes Ming to a bar in her timeline. They're living it up, thinking they've cracked the code. When the staff asks for the bill, Jiayin says, "We are going to hit a jackpot. We will pay all your bills tomorrow. Till then, you can take my purse. It is expensive." The next morning, they're pumped to check their lottery ticket. Sure enough, they win. But just as they're about to cash in, the winning number disappears from their ticket. They're crushed and finally realize they can't change the future no matter how hard they try. Later, Jiayin heads back to the restaurant to reclaim her purse, but the staff refuses to hand it over without payment. Broke and furious, they leave. On their way, they spot an advertisement featuring none other than Ming. Future Ming, that is. He's a rich businessman in 2018, giving a big shot interview on TV. Ming is stunned, wondering how he ended up like that. They rush to the place where future Ming is being interviewed, but as Ming tries to approach his future self, another earthquake hits, canceling the program. And here, future Ming starts having flashbacks of Xiajiao and realizes they've met before. Meanwhile, present Ming slips, injures his hand, and get this, future Ming gets the same injury at the exact same moment. Turns out, everything present Ming does affects future Ming too. And here's the kicker, that shady businessman from earlier? Yup, he's future Ming. And Zuni, the sleazy manager, he is the scientist who was talking to that businessman. Zuni warns future Ming that because present Ming is messing around in Xiajiao's timeline, it's messing with his memories and could really throw off his future plans. The next day, present Ming, now fed up, goes to the office, throws his resignation letter at Zuni, and walks out, quitting on his own terms. Meanwhile, future Ming shows up at Xiajiao's jewelry shop and takes her out on a date. But Xiajiao isn't feeling the same spark with future Ming that she has with present Ming. Even though future Ming wines and dines her at a fancy restaurant, something just feels off. During dinner, future Ming finally admits, "I know you're with 1999 Ming, but you need to stop. It's affecting my future, and I've got big plans that can't afford to be derailed." Xiajiao agrees to this, not because she would get her childhood home, but because she doesn't want to mess up Ming's future. So, Xiajiao, after deciding to leave 1999 Ming to secure his future, packs up and heads out. As she's leaving, she starts crying because she's torn about leaving Ming behind. Meanwhile, Ming notices that Xiajiao's door is left slightly ajar, which gives him a chance to sneak into her timeline without her assistance. In Xiajiao's timeline, she's back at her childhood home, and future Ming brings her the purse she left at the restaurant. But when Xiajiao sees the shop sticker on Ming's suit, she realizes it's actually 1999 Ming dressed up, not the future version she thought. This revelation hits her hard, and after sharing a heartfelt kiss, she decides it's best for them to part ways to avoid disrupting the future. Future Ming goes back to his own timeline, and Xiajiao watches him leave with a heavy heart. Ming then gets a call from Zuni, who tells him to come urgently to the bridge. Despite no longer being employed, Ming heads over and discovers Zuni's plan to kill the owner of the company and make it look like an accident. Zuni's plan involves getting the owner drunk to stage the death. Ming tries to dissuade Zuni, but Zuni won't listen. Ming realizes that the keychain on the owner's car matches the one Xiajiao had. This makes him realize that the owner is none other than Xiajiao's dad. Now, Ming realizes that future Ming becomes rich by killing Xiajiao's dad and taking over his business. Present Ming decides he must prevent this murder, knowing it's crucial for Xiajiao's happiness and her dad's life. Ming stops Zuni from going through with the murder, which leads to future Ming vanishing. Xiajiao gets to spend precious time with her dad again, and everything in Ming's timeline begins to change. Ming and Xiajiao, now back in their respective timelines, try to reunite. As they rush towards the apartment, Xiajiao begins to disappear due to the timeline realigning. Ming tells her that she's now going back to the past and will be 7 years younger. He reassures her that even though she doesn't know him yet, he will definitely find her in the future. 8 years later, Xiajiao is walking towards some music, and Ming spots her. They meet, but Xiajiao doesn't recognize him and kicks him, questioning who he is and why he's with her. Ming, ever the romantic, suggests, "Looks like we're starting our love story with a fight again."